You know what's strange? We spend so much time arguing about which generation is better. Boomers did this, millennials ruined that, Gen Z is doing something new. But there's a deeper question almost nobody asks. Not who's more successful, not who works harder, but who is actually happier. Because if you look closely, something doesn't add up. Millennials talk more about mental health than any generation in history, yet anxiety and depression rates are at an all-time high. And Gen X, they don't complain much. They don't post their struggles online, but research shows they might be the most stressed generation alive. So what's really going on here? Which generation is actually happier, and which one is just better at hiding it? Let's start with something simple. Picture two people. The first one is a millennial. They wake up, check their phone, scroll through messages, emails, social media. Before they even get out of bed, they've already compared their life to 50 other people. Someone just got engaged. Someone bought a house. Someone is on vacation in Bali. And without even realizing it, their brain starts whispering, "Am I behind?" Now picture the second person, Gen X. They wake up, no scrolling, no posting, no need to announce their morning. They get ready, go to work, handle responsibilities. On the surface, they seem fine, stable, quiet, in control. But here's the part nobody sees. Inside, their mind is running a completely different story.
To understand this, we need to go backwards, way back. Because happiness is not just about what you have today. It's about what your brain was trained to expect. Let's start with Generation X. This generation grew up in a world that felt unpredictable. By the 1980s, millions of kids were coming home to empty houses, both parents working, no supervision. In fact, by 1984, around 7 million children in the U.S. were regularly left alone after school. No phones, no tracking, no safety net, just silence. That kind of environment does something to a child. It teaches one powerful lesson: you're on your own. Over time, their brain adapts. They become independent, self-reliant, emotionally contained. But there's a hidden psychological shift that comes with that. Researchers describe it as growing up in a high-contingency environment, where actions have immediate consequences and no one is there to soften the impact. So Gen X learned early: don't rely too much on people. Don't expect things to last. Handle your problems quietly. And that mindset followed them into adulthood.
Now let's look at millennials, a completely different world. They grew up during the rise of the internet. More protection, more guidance, more structure, but also more comparison, more expectations, more pressure to be something. They were told, follow your passion, do what you love, you can be anything. Sounds inspiring, right? But here's the psychological trap. When your expectations are that high, reality starts to feel like a disappointment. And this is where things get interesting. Because when researchers from Gallup and Pew Research Centers started looking at happiness across generations, the results weren't what most people expected. Millennials report higher levels of anxiety and depression. They feel more overwhelmed, more uncertain about the future, and more mentally exhausted. But Gen X? They report some of the highest stress levels overall. Not loud stress, not visible stress, but constant, silent pressure. So now we have a paradox. Millennials feel everything, but talk about it openly. Gen X carries everything, but says almost nothing. So who is actually happier? To answer that, we need to understand something called the U-shaped happiness curve. It's one of the most consistent findings in psychology. Happiness tends to start high in youth, drops in midlife, then rises again later. And right now, Gen X is sitting directly in that dip, the phase of life where responsibilities peak, career pressure stabilizes but stops growing, health concerns begin to appear, and financial stress doesn't go away. They're often called the sandwich generation, taking care of children while also supporting aging parents. So even if they don't show it, their stress is constant, heavy, quiet. Millennials, on the other hand, are just entering that phase. But they're dealing with something Gen X never had to face at this level: constant digital comparison. Every success, every failure, every insecurity is amplified. Studies have shown that heavy social media use is strongly linked to lower self-esteem, higher anxiety, and reduced life satisfaction. Because your brain is no longer comparing your life to your neighbors, it's comparing your life to the entire world. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Because happiness isn't just about stress, it's also about how you process it. Gen X developed something psychologists often call defensive pessimism. They expect things to go wrong, not because they're negative, but because experience taught them to prepare for it. So when something bad happens, they're not shocked, they're ready. Millennials are different. They were raised on possibility, optimism, potential. So when life doesn't match expectations, it hits harder. It feels like failure, even when it's normal. So again, we ask the question, who is actually happier? The generation that expects less, or the generation that hopes for more? Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Neither generation is truly happier. They're just struggling in different ways. Gen X is dealing with the weight of responsibility and silent stress. Millennials are dealing with emotional overload and constant comparison. One suppresses, the other expresses, but both are carrying something heavy. And maybe the real answer isn't about which generation is happier. Maybe it's about understanding this. Happiness is not fixed. It shifts with your environment, your expectations, and the stage of life you're in. Gen X might become happier as responsibilities fade. Millennials might find peace as expectations adjust. Because according to that same psychological curve, the dip doesn't last forever. But until then, both generations are navigating pressure in their own way, one quietly, one loudly. So if you've ever felt like you're behind or overwhelmed or just tired of trying to figure everything out, it might not be you. It might just be the phase you're in. Now I'm curious, which side do you relate to more? Are you more like Gen X, quiet, independent, carrying everything alone? Or more like millennials, aware, expressive, but constantly overwhelmed? Drop it in the comments, because sometimes just knowing where you stand makes everything a little easier to understand. And if this video made you see things differently, share it with someone who needs to hear this, because the truth is, a lot more people are struggling than they let on. They're just doing it in different ways. Subscribe for more psychology breakdowns like this, and I'll see you in the next one.